The crystalline spires of Council Station Omega gleamed against the backdrop of the Andromeda Nebula, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 different suns. Inside the massive structure, beings from across the galaxy gathered in what had become the most important session in the Council's 12,000-year history. The Great Chamber, carved from a single asteroid and polished to mirror perfection, housed representatives from over 400 species. Today, however, only one species mattered: humans. Ambassador Zekthar of the Hegemony clicked his mandibles nervously as he reviewed the data streams flowing across his biointerface. The situation reports were all the same. Humanity had withdrawn from every negotiation, recalled every diplomat, and sealed their borders. For the first time in 3 centuries, the galaxy's newest members had simply said no. The humans have terminated all communication protocols, announced Coordinator Veselin, her ethereal form shimmering as she addressed the assembly. The Transcendent's voice carried the weight of authority earned through millennia of peaceful resolution. Their final transmission was brief. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant hum of translation matrices seemed to quiet as 400 species waited. Veselin's form solidified slightly, a sign of deep concern among her kind. The message stated, "We decline. Do not contact us again." The reaction was immediate. Representatives erupted in a cacophony of sounds, from the harmonic whistles of the Melodians to the guttural roars of the Crothan Empire. Ambassador Zekthar found himself swept up in the chaos, his own species clicking growing frantic as he processed the implications. This was impossible. No species refused the council. No species could afford to. High Chancellor Morgath, whose species had founded the council when most civilizations were still discovering fire, raised one massive stone appendage. The chamber gradually quieted, though tension remained thick enough to taste. The ancient being's eyes, older than some star systems, fixed on a holographic display showing human space. In 12 millennia, Morgath's voice rumbled like tectonic plates, shifting. No species has ever refused council mediation. The humans understand the consequences, yet they persist in this defiance. The word defiance seemed to hang in the air like a toxin. Council protocol was built on negotiation, compromise, and peaceful resolution. It was the foundation upon which galactic civilization rested. The very concept of refusal threatened the order that had prevented large-scale warfare for thousands of years. Admiral Kreshta of the Crothan military caste stepped forward, her ceremonial war scars glinting under the chamber's lights. With respect, High Chancellor, perhaps the humans require a firmer approach to negotiation. A wave of nervous energy rippled through the assembly. The Crothan were known for their directness, but suggesting military action against a council species was unprecedented. Ambassador Zekthar felt his breathing apparatus flutter with anxiety. The humans possess significant military capabilities, interjected Science Coordinator Talmesh, his multiple eyes reviewing data constantly streaming from his portable research station. Their expansion rate suggests advanced technology we haven't fully cataloged. Military engagement would be inadvisable without complete intelligence. This was true, and everyone knew it. Humanity had joined the galactic community just 500 years ago, but their rate of expansion had been staggering. They now controlled over 300 systems. Their population had exploded to nearly 2 trillion, and their technology seemed to advance at an almost impossible rate. What do they want? Asked Trade Minister Velkarn, his species' natural mercantile instincts focused on finding a solution that benefited everyone. Surely there's something we can offer them. Coordinator Veselin's form flickered with uncertainty. According to our analysis, the humans want to be left alone. They've expressed no interest in our technology, our trade networks, or our governance systems. They simply want us to stop. Stop what? That was the question that had brought them to this crisis. The answer was both simple and terrifying. Stop everything. Humanity had rejected every aspect of galactic civilization that other species took for granted. The integration protocols that helped new species adapt to galactic society refused. The trade agreements that had enriched countless worlds declined. The cultural exchange programs that had prevented wars for millennia abandoned. Even the basic communication channels that allowed for peaceful coexistence had been severed. Perhaps, suggested Ambassador Tikasura of the Serpentine Coalition, her scales shifting color with her emotions, we should examine why the humans are responding this way. Our xenopsychologists have studied their species extensively. The mention of xenopsychology caused another stir. The study of alien minds was a respected field, but applying it to analyze a species' rejection of council authority was uncomfortable. It implied that human thinking was somehow fundamentally different from accepted galactic norms. Dr. Mel Andrus, the council's leading xenopsychologist, materialized at the speaking podium through molecular transport. His species, the analyzers, had evolved specifically for understanding other minds. His appearance always unsettled other species. Too many eyes, too many processing nodes, and the unsettling ability to seem like he was reading thoughts. The human mind, Dr. Mel Andrus began, his voice carrying harmonic undertones that suggested deep analysis, operates on principles that are unique among known species. Where most civilizations seek harmony, integration, and collective benefit, humans prioritize autonomy, self-determination, and what they term freedom. The last word was spoken in galactic standard, but Dr. Mel Andrus provided the human term as well. The concept didn't translate well. Most species understood cooperation, mutual benefit, and collective security. Freedom, as humans understood it, was almost alien. They appear to view our integration protocols as a form of control, Dr. Mel Andrus continued. Our trade agreements as economic manipulation. Our cultural exchanges as attempts to dilute their identity. From their perspective, we are not offering benefits. We are demanding submission. The chamber erupted again. Submission? The council offered partnership, mutual growth, and peace. The idea that it could be seen as domination was deeply troubling to species who had built their civilizations on cooperative principles. High Chancellor Morgath's ancient voice cut through the noise. Dr. Mel Andrus, are you suggesting that humans are fundamentally incompatible with galactic civilization? The question struck at the heart of everything the Council represented. For 12,000 years, they had successfully integrated every species they encountered. Some took longer than others. Some required specialized approaches, but all had eventually found their place in the galactic community. The idea that a species might be genuinely incompatible was almost unthinkable. Not incompatible, Dr. Mel Andrus replied carefully. Different. Humans appear to operate under a paradigm where individual and species autonomy takes precedence over collective benefit. They will cooperate when it serves their interests, but they will not submit to authority they haven't chosen to accept. Ambassador Zekthar found himself studying the holographic display of human space with new eyes. 300 systems, all controlled by a single species that had somehow managed to expand without the Council's guidance. No other species had achieved such rapid expansion independently. How is that possible? He asked aloud, drawing attention to himself. No species develops faster alone than with Council support. Science Coordinator Talmesh's eyes focused on Zekthar with what might have been approval. An excellent question. Our analysis suggests that human development follows patterns unlike any we've observed. They appear to thrive on competition, both internal and external. Where most species achieve stability through cooperation, humans seem to achieve advancement through controlled conflict. The concept was disturbing. Controlled conflict was an oxymoron to most galactic species. Conflict was what the Council existed to prevent. Yet humans seem to have built their entire civilization around it. They fight among themselves? Asked Minister Velkarn, his trading instincts clearly troubled by the economic inefficiencies such a system would create. Constantly, Dr. Mel Andrus confirmed. Not total war, but continuous competition at every level. Economic, technological, ideological, even recreational. They call it innovation, progress, growth. Where we see waste and inefficiency, they see motivation and advancement. Admiral Kreshta's scarred features showed something that might have been respect. Warriors who never stop fighting, even their own kind. Interesting. Not warriors, Dr. Melanders corrected. Competitors. They've turned survival instincts into advancement mechanisms. They compete to build better technology, create more efficient systems, explore further into space. Competition drives them forward at speeds that cooperation cannot match. The implications were staggering. The Council system was built on the assumption that cooperation was inherently superior to competition. Every species they'd encountered had eventually recognized this truth. Humans seem to have found a way to make competition itself cooperative, competing with each other to benefit their species as a whole. This is why they reject our integration protocols. Coordinator Veslin said, her form stabilizing as understanding dawned. They see our cooperative systems as stagnation. It was a harsh truth, but accurate. The Council had achieved peace and prosperity through careful balance and gradual progress. Change came slowly, deliberately, with extensive consultation and consensus building. Humans apparently viewed this as an obstacle to growth rather than a foundation for stability. Trade Minister Velkarn was reviewing economic data, his expression growing increasingly concerned. Their economic output is already approaching levels comparable to our founding species. Without Council infrastructure, without our trade networks. How? Competition, Dr. Melanders repeated. They're not sharing technology equally among all humans. Different groups compete to develop better solutions. Then, the successful innovations spread rapidly through their population. They advance faster because they accept that some will succeed while others fail. The concept was antithetical to Council philosophy. When the Council developed new technology, it was shared equally among all members to ensure no species gained unfair advantage. The process was slow but fair. Humans apparently saw fairness as an obstacle to progress. What do they want? High Chancellor Morgath asked again, his ancient voice carrying the weight of growing understanding. If not integration, not cooperation, not the benefits we offer, what is their goal? The answer came from an unexpected source. Junior analyst Kex Ti, barely old enough to have earned her position, activated her communication node from the gallery. Speaking protocol required invitation, but her urgency overrode formality. High Chancellor, if I may, we've been analyzing human transmissions, and there's a pattern we've identified. They don't want anything from us. They want to give us something. The chamber fell silent again. The idea was so unexpected that most representatives struggled to process it. In galactic politics, every interaction was transactional. Species offered resources, technology, territory, or influence in exchange for benefits. The concept of wanting to give without receiving was almost incomprehensible. Expen Murgot commanded. Junior analyst Kexti's voice carried excitement despite the formal setting. They call it inspiration, High Chancellor. Human transmissions suggest they believe their rapid advancement and independence will inspire other species to exceed their current limitations. They think the galaxy is stagnating, and they want to provide an example of an alternative path. The word stagnating hit the assembly like a physical blow. The Council had created the most peaceful, prosperous, stable civilization in known history. The idea that it could be seen as stagnant was deeply offensive to species who had spent millennia building it. Yet, as Kexti's analysis sank in, uncomfortable truths began to emerge. When was the last time a truly revolutionary technology had been developed? When had any species made a breakthrough discovery that changed everything? The Council system promoted steady, incremental progress. Revolutionary change was destabilizing. They want to show us up, Admiral Kreshta said bluntly. They think they can do better than 12,000 years of proven success. Not show us up, Dr. Melanders corrected. Show us what's possible. From their perspective, we've achieved peace by accepting limitations. They believe limitations exist to be overcome. The philosophical divide was becoming clear. The Council had created stability by establishing sustainable boundaries: technological, territorial, social, economic. Humans seemed to view boundaries as challenges rather than safeguards. The question, Coordinator Veselin said, her form shifting to indicate deep thought, is whether this perspective represents wisdom or dangerous naivety. Ambassador Zekthar found himself caught between fascination and fear. If humans were right, if the Council system was indeed limiting galactic potential, then everything they'd built might need fundamental revision. But if humans were wrong, their path could lead to the kind of chaos and warfare the Council existed to prevent. "We need more information," he said, speaking to the assembly but directing his words toward the leadership. "We're making decisions about humanity based on analysis and assumption. Perhaps we should try to understand them directly." "They've severed all communication," reminded Trade Minister Velkarn. "They've made it clear they don't want contact." "Official contact," Kexti interjected again, her youth making her bold. "But they haven't blocked passive observation. We could study their society, their development, their methods. Understand what they're actually doing instead of speculating about their motives." The suggestion created another stir. Passive observation of a Council species without their consent was technically legal, but ethically questionable. It was typically reserved for pre-contact species or those under quarantine for dangerous behavior. High Chancellor Morgath considered the proposal with the weight of his vast experience. "Dr. Mel Andrus, in your professional assessment, would extended observation of human society provide useful insights?" "Almost certainly," a xenopsychologist replied. "Human society appears to be evolving at an unprecedented rate. Observing their adaptation methods could provide valuable data about alternative development paths." Or, Admiral Kreshta added grimly, "It could provide intelligence about a potentially dangerous species that's rejecting established galactic order." Both perspectives had merit, and that was what made the decision so difficult. Humans could represent either the greatest opportunity or the greatest threat the Council had faced in millennia. Without better understanding, it was impossible to determine which. "I propose a compromise," Ambassador Thura suggested, her scale showing the calm colors of reasoned thought. "We establish an observation protocol, passive, non-intrusive, purely for intelligence gathering. Simultaneously, we prepare for multiple scenarios based on what we learn." It was a typically diplomatic solution, and one that satisfied no one completely. But it offered a path forward when other options seemed to lead either to dangerous ignorance or potentially catastrophic action. The observation team would need to include representatives from multiple disciplines, Science Coordinator Talmesh noted. Military assessment, economic analysis, technological evaluation, sociological study. This isn't just about understanding human psychology anymore. Coordinator Veselin's form solidified into a posture of decision. "I'll coordinate the observation protocol. Dr. Mel Andrus will lead psychological analysis. Admiral Kreshta will handle security assessment. Minister Velkarn will evaluate economic implications. Science Coordinator Talmesh will focus on technological development." The assignments made sense, bringing together the Council's most experienced analysts. But Ambassador Zekthar couldn't shake the feeling that they were fundamentally misunderstanding something crucial about the situation. "High Chancellor," he said, activating his communication node, "what if we're approaching this backwards?" Morgath's ancient gaze fixed on him. "Explain." "We're trying to understand why humans are rejecting us," Zekthar continued, his thoughts crystallizing as he spoke. "But what if the important question is what we might be rejecting about ourselves?" The suggestion was radical. The Council system had proven successful for 12,000 years. The idea that it might need fundamental changes was almost heretical. Yet Kexti's analysis suggested that humans saw the system as limiting rather than beneficial. "You're suggesting we examine our own assumptions," Dr. Melandris said, his multiple eyes focusing on Zekthar with interest. From a xenopsychological perspective, that's actually quite insightful. The humans aren't just rejecting integration, Zekthar pressed on. They're demonstrating an alternative. Maybe we need to understand that alternative not as a threat to our system, but as a supplement to it. The concept was intriguing, but dangerous. If the Council system was indeed limiting galactic potential, admitting it could destabilize everything they'd built. But if they refused to consider the possibility, they might be condemning the galaxy to stagnation. This observation protocol becomes even more critical, Coordinator Veslin declared. We're not just studying humanity anymore. We're studying the possibility that galactic civilization itself might need to evolve. The session was formally adjourned, but conversations continued throughout the station. Representatives clustered in small groups, discussing implications, sharing concerns, proposing theories. The humans had achieved something unprecedented. They forced the entire galactic community to question fundamental assumptions about progress, cooperation, and civilization itself. As Ambassador Zekthar made his way back to his quarters, he passed by observation decks where beings from hundreds of species stood looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was pursuing its own path, developing its own solutions, building its own future. Whether that future would inspire or threaten the galaxy remained to be seen. But for the first time in his long diplomatic career, Zekthar found himself wondering if the Council's greatest achievement, 12,000 years of peace and stability, might also be its greatest limitation. The humans seemed to believe that stagnation was a greater danger than conflict, that progress required risk, that true strength came from constant challenge rather than comfortable cooperation. Tomorrow, the observation would begin. The galaxy would watch humanity with unprecedented attention, studying every aspect of their society, their technology, their culture. But Zekthar suspected that what they learned would say as much about themselves as it did about the species that had dared to say no to the most powerful civilization in galactic history. The humans had refused to negotiate. In doing so, they had forced the entire galaxy into the most important negotiation of all, the one between what was and what could be. Whether that negotiation would lead to enlightenment or catastrophe would depend on what both sides were willing to learn about each other. And, perhaps more importantly, what they were willing to learn about themselves. He observation station designated watching, I hung in the void between star systems, its adaptive camouflage rendering it invisible to most detection methods. Inside its cramped corridors, the finest minds from across the Council worked around the clock to understand humanity's greatest mystery, how they had achieved so much so quickly without anyone else's help. Dr. Melandris found himself staring at data streams that challenged everything he thought he knew about intelligent species development. His multiple processing nodes worked overtime, analyzing human social interactions, decision-making processes, and organizational structures. What he discovered was simultaneously fascinating and disturbing. Coordinator Veslin, he called across the main analysis chamber, I need you to review these findings. They're unprecedented. The Transcendent's ethereal form materialized beside his workstation, her usual calm replaced by focused attention. Around them, dozens of specialists from various fields continue their work, but Dr. Melandris had requested privacy screens for this particular revelation. What have you found? Veslin asked, her form shifting to indicate serious concern. Humans don't have a single government, Dr. Melandris said, his voice carrying tones of amazement. They have hundreds, thousands if you count all organizational levels. And they're constantly competing with each other. Veslin's form flickered with confusion. That's impossible. No species can coordinate interstellar expansion without unified authority. The logistics alone would be chaotic, Dr. Melandris agreed. And yet observe. The holographic display activated, showing human space in real time. Ships moved between systems in patterns that seemed random at first glance. Trade routes shifted constantly. New colonies appeared without apparent central planning. Military vessels from different human factions sometimes operated in the same systems without conflict, sometimes engaged in what appear to be practice battles. They call it federalism, Dr. Melandris explained. Local governments handle local issues, regional authorities coordinate larger projects, and their central government handles only species-wide concerns. But even their central government is constantly changing leadership through something they call elections. The concept of elections was known to the Council, but only as a historical curiosity practiced by some primitive species before they achieved stable governance. The idea that an advanced species would intentionally change leadership on a regular schedule seemed absurd. How do they maintain consistency of policy? Veslin asked. How do they plan long-term projects? How do they prevent chaos? They don't, Dr. Melandris said simply. They embrace it. Watch this. The display zoomed in on a human system where 3 different colonial expeditions had arrived simultaneously, all claiming rights to the same planet. Instead of the territorial dispute that would typically require council mediation, the humans had simply divided the planet into sectors and begun competing to build the most successful settlements. Each group is using different approaches, Dr. Melandris narrated. One focuses on industrial development, another on agricultural efficiency, the third on technological innovation. They're not fighting over resources. They're competing to prove whose method works best. And the losers? Veslin asked. Learn from the winners and try again elsewhere. Human failure isn't permanent exile from opportunity. It's education for improvement. Across the analysis chamber, Admiral Kreshta was having her own revelations about human military doctrine. The Crothan warrior had expected to find a civilization built around conquest and domination. What she discovered instead challenged her understanding of strength itself. Science Coordinator Talmesh, she called, her voice carrying both admiration and concern. You need to see this immediately. The multi-eyed scientist abandoned his technological analysis and moved to Admiral Kreshta's station. The display showed human military exercises, but not the kind either of them had expected. They're not training to fight other species, Admiral Kreshta explained. They're training to fight themselves. Every human military organization spends most of its time preparing for conflict with other human military organizations. Talmesh's numerous eyes focused on the data with growing amazement. They maintain multiple military hierarchies simultaneously. How do they prevent actual warfare? Rules, Admiral Kreshta said, pointing to complex legal frameworks governing human military competition. Extensive, detailed, constantly evolving rules that allow for maximum conflict without destruction. They fight economic wars, technological races, territorial competitions, even recreational battles, all within structures designed to promote advancement without annihilation. Controlled conflict, Talmesh breathed. Dr. Melandris was right. They've turned destructive impulses into constructive advancement. Admiral Krestanotet Krimli. And the results are terrifying. Their military technology advances at 10 times the rate of Council standard development. Their soldiers are trained to fight opponents who know all their tactics and capabilities. Their strategies assume intelligent, capable enemies rather than primitive resistors. The implications were sobering. Council military doctrine was designed for peacekeeping and defense against pre-spaceflight species. Human military doctrine was designed for war against equals or superiors. If conflict ever did arise between humanity and the Council, the humans would be prepared in ways the galactic community was not. But it was Trade Minister Velkarn who made the discovery that would reshape understanding of human economics entirely. The mercantile specialist had been analyzing human trade patterns for weeks, expecting to find familiar structures of supply and demand, resource allocation, and profit maximization. Instead, he found something that shouldn't have been possible. They're not maximizing efficiency, he announced to the assembled team, his voice carrying tones of professional bewilderment. They're deliberately creating inefficiency to drive innovation. Coordinator Veslin materialized at his station instantly. Explain. Look at this, Velkarn said, highlighting human manufacturing data. They have 17 different companies producing the same product, each using different methods, different materials, different distribution systems. The result is massive duplication of effort and resource waste. Then, why do they permit it? Veslin asked. Because it works, Velkarn said, still struggling to accept his own analysis. Each company tries to gain advantage by improving their methods. The competition drives constant innovation. Yes, 16 companies waste resources, but the 17th develops something revolutionary. Then all 17 companies adopt the innovation and start competing again. The display showed human technological development over the past century. Breakthrough followed breakthrough in rapid succession. New materials, new energy systems, new manufacturing processes, new transportation methods. The rate of advancement was staggering. Council economics eliminates waste through central planning and resource optimization, Velkarn continued. Human economics eliminates stagnation through deliberate redundancy and competitive pressure. Both systems work, but they produce radically different results. Science coordinator Talmesh abandoned his own analysis to study Velkarn's data. The efficiency difference is remarkable. Council systems achieve 94% resource utilization efficiency. Human systems achieve only 73% efficiency. But, Velkarn added, human systems produce innovation at 15 times council rates, and their absolute output is growing exponentially while ours remains stable. The mathematics were uncomfortable. Council systems were more efficient, but human systems were more effective. The question was which approach better served long-term galactic development. Dr. Melandris had been monitoring all the parallel analyses, and now he called the team together for what he termed synthesis assessment. The assembled specialists gathered around the main display as he prepared to share conclusions that would reshape their understanding of intelligence itself. Humans represent a fundamentally different approach to the challenges of existence, he began. Where most species seek stability, they seek growth. Where we eliminate competition to reduce conflict, they embrace competition to drive advancement. Where we optimize existing systems, they constantly create new ones. The question, Admiral Kreshta interjected, is whether their approach is sustainable. Competition and growth require resources. Constant change creates instability. Eventually, they might exhaust their advantages and face collapse. Possibly, Dr. Melandris agreed. But our analysis suggests they're aware of these risks and actively working to address them. They don't just compete blindly. They evolve their competitive frameworks to maintain benefits while reducing dangers. The display showed human environmental management, social welfare systems, and resource conservation programs. Every advancement in competitive capability was balanced by advancement in stability maintenance. They're not just competing, science coordinator Talmesh realized. They're competing to compete better. They're using competition to improve competition itself. The concept was dizzying. Most species viewed competition as a primitive stage of development, something to be outgrown as civilization matured. Humans had apparently turned competition into a technology, a tool for advancement that they constantly refined and improved. This explains their refusal to negotiate, Coordinator Veslin said, her form stabilizing as understanding crystallized. They see our integration protocols as an attempt to replace their advancement technology with our stability technology. From their perspective, Dr. Melandris confirmed, joining the council would be like voluntarily lobotomizing themselves. They would gain peace and prosperity, but lose the very mechanism that makes them uniquely successful. The observation team fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans weren't rejecting council civilization because they were primitive or hostile. They were rejecting it because they had developed an alternative that they believed was superior. Are they right? Admiral Kreshta asked bluntly. It was the question none of them wanted to address directly. If human methods were genuinely superior to council approaches, then 12,000 years of galactic development had been following a suboptimal path. Different circumstances might require different approaches, Dr. Melandris said carefully. Council methods excel at maintaining stability and ensuring universal benefit. Human methods excel at rapid advancement and maximizing potential. Neither is objectively superior. They serve different purposes. But even as he spoke, Dr. Melandris knew the diplomatic answer wasn't entirely honest. The data suggested that human methods were not just different, but more effective at achieving goals that the Council claimed to value: technological advancement, individual prosperity, species security, and long-term survival capability. "We need to see more," Velkarn said suddenly. "We're analyzing their systems in isolation, but we need to understand how they handle challenges that Council civilization has solved through cooperation." "Such as?" Veslin asked. "Resource scarcity, environmental damage, social inequality, interspecies conflict, which they don't face yet, but they will eventually, disease outbreaks, natural disasters, all the problems that drove species to seek Council membership in the first place." It was a crucial point. Human competitive systems might excel in periods of growth and expansion, but how would they handle true crises? Council cooperative systems have been tested by every conceivable challenge over 12 millennia. Human systems were still young and untested. "Expanding observation parameters," Admiral Kreshta announced. "We need comprehensive crisis simulation analysis. If human systems are genuinely superior, they should excel under pressure, not just during prosperity." The team began reconfiguring their monitoring systems to focus on human crisis response mechanisms. What they found over the following weeks would either validate Council assumptions about cooperation or force them to reconsider everything they thought they knew about survival. The first test case came sooner than expected. A massive asteroid impact had struck one of humanity's agricultural worlds, destroying crops that fed 17 different systems. In Council space, such a disaster would trigger immediate relief coordination, resource redistribution, and careful planning to minimize suffering while rebuilding capacity. Humans handled it differently. Within hours of the impact, thousands of independent relief efforts launched from hundreds of different worlds. Some focused on immediate food delivery. Others began developing emergency crop alternatives. Still others started planning infrastructure reconstruction. The efforts weren't centrally coordinated, creating massive duplication and apparent chaos. But the results were staggering. Relief reached affected populations faster than Council protocols could have achieved. Alternative food sources were developed and deployed within days rather than months. Reconstruction began immediately using innovative methods created by competitive engineering firms. The crisis that would have taken Council civilization months to address was resolved in weeks. "They're not just more efficient," Science Coordinator Talmesh observed. "They're more resilient. Their redundant systems mean that failure at any single point doesn't compromise the overall response. It's like they expect disasters," Admiral Kreshta added. "Their entire system is designed to handle multiple simultaneous failures without central coordination." The implications were sobering. Council systems were optimized for normal operations under peaceful conditions. Human systems were apparently optimized for continued function under any conditions, including those that hadn't yet occurred. But the most disturbing discovery came when the observation team detected signs that humanity was aware of their surveillance. "They know we're watching," Dr. Melandris announced grimly, "and they're deliberately displaying capabilities for our benefit." The evidence was subtle but unmistakable. Human activities in border regions showed signs of coordination designed to showcase their most impressive achievements. New technologies were tested in areas where Council sensors could detect them. Military exercises demonstrated capabilities that exceeded previous assessments. "They're not just refusing to negotiate," Coordinator Veslin realized. "They're negotiating through demonstration. They're showing us what we're missing by maintaining our current systems." Or, Admiral Kreshta said darkly, "They're showing us what we're facing if we try to force integration." Both interpretations had merit, and both were deeply troubling. If humans were trying to inspire galactic civilization to exceed its limitations, they were succeeding in ways that could destabilize everything the Council had built. If they were warning against forced integration, they were demonstrating capabilities that made such integration impossible anyway. We need to return to the Council, Dr. Melandris decided. The data we've collected changes everything. The leadership needs to understand what we're dealing with before decisions are made that can't be reversed. As the observation team prepared their reports, each specialist struggled with conclusions that challenged their fundamental understanding of civilization itself. The humans had not just rejected Council integration. They had demonstrated that such integration might be counterproductive for species capable of alternative development paths. The question now was whether the galactic community was prepared to accept that their 12,000-year success story might not be the only story worth telling, and whether they were prepared for the changes that such acceptance might require. The journey back to Council Station Omega would give them time to prepare their presentations, but no amount of time would make the truth they had discovered any easier to accept. Humanity had forced the galaxy to confront possibilities that were simultaneously inspiring and terrifying. The real negotiation was just beginning. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened under circumstances unprecedented in its 12,000-year history. Representatives from every major species crowded into the Great Chamber, while countless others participated through quantum communication links. The air itself seemed charged with tension as the observation team prepared to deliver their findings about humanity. High Chancellor Morgath's ancient presence dominated the chamber as he called for order. His stone-like features, carved by millennia of decision-making, showed signs of strain that concerned even his closest advisors. The questions raised by human refusal to negotiate had shaken the foundations of galactic civilization. Dr. Melandris, the Chancellor announced, "Present your findings." The xenopsychologist materialized at the central podium, his multiple processing nodes already working to organize data that challenged every assumption about intelligent development. The holographic displays around him came to life, showing human society in unprecedented detail. Esteemed colleagues, Dr. Melandris began, what we have discovered about humanity requires us to reconsider fundamental principles about civilization, cooperation, and progress itself. The first display showed human population growth over 5 centuries. The curve was exponential, defying every model of sustainable development the Council had established. Where most species stabilized their populations after achieving spaceflight, humans had continued expanding at rates that should have led to resource depletion and social collapse. Human population has increased by 847% since they achieved interstellar capability, Dr. Melandris announced. According to our models, this should be impossible without resource wars, environmental destruction, or a social breakdown. Instead, they've achieved it while improving living standards for their entire species. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembly. Population control was considered a fundamental requirement for civilized species. The Council had developed extensive protocols for managing growth to ensure sustainability and prevent the conflicts that historically arose from resource competition. "Ow," asked Representative Tikisha, her scales shifting to colors of intense curiosity. "Competition-driven innovation," Dr. Melandris replied. "Where we prevent resource conflicts through controlled allocation, humans prevent resource conflicts through aggressive expansion of resource availability. They don't fight over existing resources, they compete to create new ones." The display shifted to show human terraforming projects, asteroid mining operations, and energy generation systems. In 500 years, they had transformed barren worlds into garden planets, converted entire asteroid belts into industrial centers, and developed energy generation methods that extracted power from sources the Council considered unusable. Their approach to resource scarcity is not conservation, Dr. Melandris continued, but expansion. When they need more food, they don't reduce consumption. They create more agricultural worlds. When they need more energy, they don't implement efficiency measures. They build larger generation systems. Science Coordinator Talmesh activated his communication node. The energy requirements for such expansion should exceed their generation capability. How do they maintain the necessary infrastructure? Continuous technological advancement, DR. Mel Andrus answered. Their competitive systems produce breakthrough innovations at rates that make exponential expansion possible. Each generation of technology is significantly more efficient than the last, allowing them to do more with less while simultaneously doing more overall. The implications were staggering. Council science advanced through careful research, extensive testing, and gradual implementation. Breakthrough discoveries were rare, occurring perhaps once per century for any given field. Humans appeared to achieve breakthroughs continuously, treating revolutionary advancement as a normal expectation rather than an extraordinary event. Trade Minister Velkarn stood to address the assembly directly. The economic implications of human development challenge every principle of galactic commerce. They've achieved prosperity through methods that should create poverty. The displays showed human economic data in detail. Instead of the careful resource allocation and equitable distribution that characterize council economics, human systems showed enormous disparities in wealth, opportunity, and outcomes. Yet paradoxically, even the poorest humans enjoyed living standards that exceeded council averages. They tolerate inequality that we would consider destabilizing, Velkarn explained. But their average prosperity increases so rapidly that even their disadvantaged populations benefit from overall growth. They've solved poverty not through redistribution, but through abundance creation. Unsustainable, declared Representative Mortex of the Equilibrium Coalition. Such disparity must lead to social unrest, revolution, or species fragmentation. Our analysis suggests otherwise, Dr. Melandris replied. Human social systems have evolved to channel dissatisfaction into advancement motivation. Citizens who are dissatisfied with their circumstances compete to improve them, driving innovation and economic growth that benefits everyone. The concept was alien to most galactic species. Council systems emphasize satisfaction, contentment, and social harmony. The idea that dissatisfaction could be productive rather than dangerous required a fundamental shift in thinking about social organization. Admiral Kreshta stepped forward to present military analysis that would prove even more disturbing. Human military capability exceeds our previous assessments by orders of magnitude, she announced grimly. But more importantly, their military philosophy represents a completely different approach to security and conflict. The displays showed human military exercises, ship designs, and strategic planning. Where Council military doctrine focused on peacekeeping, defense, and minimum necessary force, human military doctrine assumed total war against technologically superior opponents. They don't train to maintain peace, Admiral Kreshta explained. They train to win wars. Every human soldier, officer, and strategist assumes they will face enemies who are better equipped, better trained, and better prepared. Their entire military system is designed around overcoming superior opposition. But they've never fought a real war, pointed out General Vastor of the Defense Coordination Authority. Their military experience is limited to internal competitions and training exercises. Exactly, Admiral Kreshta replied. They've been preparing for galactic-scale warfare without ever experiencing it. Their simulations and exercises assume opponents with capabilities exceeding their own. They're trained to fight enemies they've never encountered, using strategies designed for conflicts they've never experienced. The disturbing implication was that humanity was preparing for war with the Council itself. Not because they intended aggression, but because they assumed that advanced spacefaring species would eventually come into conflict. Their refusal to negotiate might reflect not hostility, but preparation. Their military technology development follows the same pattern as their civilian advancement, Admiral Kreshta continued. Rapid innovation driven by competitive pressure. Military contractors compete to develop superior weapons, defenses, and strategies. The result is technological advancement at rates that would be impossible under Council coordination protocols. Dr. Melandris activated additional displays showing human research and development systems. The pattern extends to every aspect of their civilization. Medical advancement, educational methodology, scientific research, artistic expression, all driven by competitive frameworks that produce results exceeding Council standards. Impossible, declared Chief Medical Coordinator Velthara. Medical advancement requires careful testing, extensive validation, and gradual implementation to ensure safety. Rapid development leads to dangerous mistakes and public health disasters. Human medical systems account for this through parallel development and rapid error correction, Dr. Melandris replied. Multiple research teams compete to develop treatments for the same conditions. Failed approaches are quickly identified and abandoned, while successful innovations are rapidly adopted and improved. Their error rate per individual project is higher than ours, but their overall advancement rate is exponentially greater. The display showed human medical achievements over the past century. Diseases that would take Council medicine decades to address had been cured within years. Life expectancy had increased dramatically. Even genetic modification and enhancement techniques that the Council considered too dangerous to implement were being used safely across human populations. They've eliminated aging, Dr. Melandris announced quietly, letting the statement hang in the shocked silence that followed. Not just extended life, eliminated the aging process itself. Human citizens can now choose their physical age and maintain it indefinitely. The revelation sent waves of shock through the assembly. Aging elimination had been theoretically possible for millennia, but Council medical ethics prevented its implementation. The social, economic, and psychological implications were considered too dangerous to risk. Yet humans had apparently solved all the associated problems and implemented the technology successfully. Social impact? Asked Sociological Coordinator Prindon, her voice barely audible. Minimal, Dr. Melandris replied. Humans have restructured their society to accommodate indefinite lifespans. Career flexibility, relationship evolution, continuous education, and social mobility have all adapted to support eternal life. What we considered an impossible challenge, they've treated as a solvable problem. Coordinator Veslin materialized at the podium to present the most troubling findings of all. The observation data suggests that humanity is aware of our surveillance and is deliberately demonstrating their capabilities for our benefit. The chamber erupted in concerned discussions. The idea that humans were managing their public image while under secret observation suggested intelligence capabilities and strategic thinking that exceeded Council assessments. They know we're watching, Veslin continued, and they've organized their border activities to showcase their most impressive achievements. New technologies are tested where our sensors can detect them. Economic and military capabilities are displayed in ways that maximize our intelligence gathering. Deception? Asked Internal Security Director Castell. Communication? Dr. Melandris corrected. They're negotiating with us through demonstration rather than discussion. Since we refuse to accept their direct refusal of integration, they're showing us why integration would be unnecessary for them and potentially counterproductive for us. The implication was that humanity was treating the Council as a junior partner rather than a superior authority. They weren't seeking approval or permission. They were providing education about alternatives the Council hadn't considered. What do they want? High Chancellor Morgath asked again, his ancient voice carrying the weight of growing comprehension. Nothing, Dr. Melandris replied. And everything. They want us to leave them alone to develop their own path. But they also want us to consider whether our path is the only valid approach to civilization. They want to inspire us, Junior Analyst Kex Ti added from the gallery, her voice carrying both excitement and concern. They believe galactic civilization has achieved stability at the cost of potential. They want to demonstrate what's possible when species accept instability as the price of advancement. The philosophical challenge was unprecedented. The Council had built 12,000 years of peace on the principle that stability was the highest good. Humans were suggesting that stability might be the highest limitation. Are they right? Representative Tchwisisara asked directly. The question hung in the air like a toxin. To admit that human methods might be superior would invalidate 12 millennia of galactic development. But to ignore the evidence would mean accepting stagnation while humanity raced ahead toward possibilities the Council couldn't match. Different approaches serve different purposes, Dr. Melandris said carefully. Council methods excel at maintaining peace, ensuring universal benefit, and providing security for all species. Human methods excel at maximizing potential, driving advancement, and preparing for unknown challenges. But if forced to choose, Admiral Kreshtop pressed, which approach better ensures long-term survival? It was the crucial question, and one that the observation team had debated extensively. Council methods guaranteed survival under known conditions. Human methods maximized capability to handle unknown conditions. In a stable universe, Council approaches were superior. In an unpredictable universe, human approaches offered better adaptation potential. We don't know what challenges galactic civilization will face in the future, Dr. Melandris admitted. If the universe remains stable and predictable, Council methods will continue to succeed. If unknown threats emerge, human methods may prove more effective at developing solutions. Science Coordinator Talmesh activated his communication node. The data suggests that human development is accelerating exponentially. If current trends continue, within a few centuries their capabilities will exceed those of the entire Council combined. The statement struck the assembly like a physical blow. The possibility that a single species could surpass the combined achievements of 400 civilizations was almost unthinkable. Yet the mathematical projections were undeniable. They're not trying to replace us, Dr. Melandris clarified. They're trying to show us what we could become if we adopted their development methods. From their perspective, we're all voluntarily limiting ourselves. And from our perspective? High Chancellor Morgath asked. They're taking enormous risks that could lead to catastrophic failure, Dr. Melandris replied honestly. Their rapid advancement, competitive systems, and acceptance of instability could result in species-wide collapse, destructive conflicts, or technological disasters that destroy them entirely. But, Coordinator Veselin added, our analysis suggests they're aware of these risks and actively developing safeguards. They're not advancing blindly. They're creating mechanisms to handle the consequences of rapid change. The observation team had discovered that human society included extensive monitoring systems, crisis response protocols, and stability maintenance mechanisms. They weren't ignoring the dangers of their approach. They were treating danger management as another competitive challenge to be solved through innovation. They've turned survival itself into a technology, Admiral Kreshta observed. They compete to develop better ways to survive, better ways to adapt, better ways to handle unknown challenges. Where we achieve survival through avoiding risks, they achieve survival through mastering risks. The implications were staggering. If humans were correct, then Council civilization had chosen security over capability. They had guaranteed survival under current conditions at the cost of adaptation ability for future conditions. But if humans were wrong, their rapid advancement and competitive systems could lead to disasters that would make Council caution seem prescient. The choice between stability and growth might ultimately determine which approach proves successful. Recommendation? High Chancellor Morgath asked. Dr. Melandris looked around the assembled representatives, seeing 12,000 years of successful civilization struggling to comprehend an alternative they had never imagined. Continued observation, he said finally. We need to understand not just what humans are doing, but whether it's working. If their methods prove sustainable and beneficial, we may need to consider modifications to our own systems. If their methods prove destructive, we'll need to be prepared to handle the consequences. And if they continue to refuse integration, Admiral Kreshta asked. Then, we respect their choice, Dr. Melandris replied. And we learn everything we can from their example while preparing for a galaxy where multiple approaches to civilization may need to coexist. The session was formally adjourned, but the real work was just beginning. For the first time in galactic history, the Council faced the possibility that their way was not the only way. Whether that realization would lead to growth or catastrophe would depend on how they chose to handle the challenge humanity represented. The humans had forced the galaxy to confront its own assumptions. The question now was whether galactic civilization was strong enough to learn from the encounter, or whether it would retreat into defensive certainty that might prove ultimately limiting. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same 3 months after the devastating revelations about human civilization. The galaxy found itself divided as never before in its recorded history. What had begun as a simple integration dispute had evolved into a fundamental crisis of confidence that threatened to reshape galactic civilization itself. Ambassador Zekthar stood at the observation deck of Council Station Omega, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. Each vessel brought representatives carrying urgent messages, emergency proposals, and demands for action that the Council was struggling to address. The humans had succeeded in doing what no external threat had ever accomplished, forcing the galactic community to question itself. Behind him, emergency sessions continued around the clock as species after species demanded answers to questions that had no easy solutions. The careful balance that had maintained galactic peace for 12 millennia was under strain from internal pressures that no one had anticipated. Ambassador, came a voice behind him. Zekthar turned to find junior analyst Kex Ti approaching, her expression carrying news that was clearly significant. "What have you discovered?" he asked. "The humans have made contact," she said quietly. "Not with the Council directly, but with individual species. They're offering something they call parallel development partnerships." Zekthar felt his breathing apparatus flutter with anxiety. Individual contact between Council species and non-integrated entities was technically legal, but politically dangerous. It threatened the unity that had been the foundation of galactic stability. "Which species?" he asked. 17 so far, Kex Ti replied. "All younger species that joined the Council within the last 2,000 years. The humans are offering to share development methodologies, technological innovations, and what they call growth acceleration protocols." The implications were staggering. If younger species began adopting human development methods while remaining within the Council structure, it could create internal tensions that the existing system couldn't handle. The delicate balance between rapid advancement and stable cooperation would be shattered. "What are they asking in return?" Zekthar pressed. "Nothing," Kex Ti said, her voice carrying tones of amazement. "They're offering free access to their innovations, their methodologies, their technological advances. The only requirement is that recipient species maintain detailed records of their progress and share the results with humanity for analysis." It was a masterstroke of diplomatic strategy. By offering benefits without demanding submission, humans were positioning themselves as partners rather than competitors. Species that felt constrained by Council development protocols now had an alternative that promised faster advancement without requiring them to leave the galactic community. "Has the Council leadership been informed?" Zekthar asked. "High Chancellor Morgath is meeting with the affected species now," Kex Ti replied. "The situation is complicated." That was an understatement. If Council species began adopting human methods while remaining within Council structure, it would create a hybrid system that had never been tested. The results could be beneficial, destabilizing, or catastrophic. Zekthar made his way to the emergency session chamber, where he found a heated debate already in progress. Representatives from the species contacted by humanity were arguing with Council leadership about their right to explore alternative development paths. The humans offer advancement without control, Representative Valkesh of the Ascending Coalition was saying. They're willing to share their innovations freely without demanding integration, submission, or fundamental changes to our society. Unprecedented generosity, High Chancellor Morgath replied grimly, which suggests ulterior motives that we haven't identified. No species offers valuable resources without expecting compensation. Unless, Dr. Melandris interjected. Their compensation is the knowledge gained from watching how their methods work when applied to different species. They're conducting galactic-scale experiments in development acceleration. The observation was insightful and disturbing. Humans might be offering free advancement in exchange for data about how their methods affected non-human species. The knowledge gained could be invaluable for refining techniques that would make humanity even more successful. Representative HFY Sesura activated her communication node. The fundamental question remains, do we have the right to prevent Council species from exploring alternatives to current development protocols? It was a question that struck at the heart of Council philosophy. The galactic community was built on voluntary cooperation, shared benefit, and mutual support. But it was also built on the assumption that Council methods were optimal for all species. If that assumption was wrong, then preventing exploration of alternatives would be paternalistic and potentially harmful. We have a responsibility to protect member species from potentially dangerous experimentation, Admiral Kreshta stated firmly. Human methods may work for humans, but applying them to species with different psychology, physiology, and social structures could be catastrophic. With respect, Representative Valkesh replied, shouldn't that be our decision to make? If we're willing to accept the risks, why should the Council prevent us from trying? The debate revealed a fundamental tension between collective security and individual autonomy that the Council had never directly faced. For 12,000 years, species had joined the galactic community because Council methods were clearly superior to their alternatives. Now, for the first time, an alternative existed that might be superior to Council methods. Science Coordinator Talmesh activated multiple displays showing current galactic development trends. The data suggests that species currently feel constrained by Council development protocols. Innovation rates have been declining for the past millennium, breakthrough discoveries are becoming rarer, and younger species report frustration with the pace of advancement. Stability requires gradual progress, Coordinator Veslin replied. Rapid change leads to instability, which leads to conflict, which leads to the very problems the Council exists to prevent. But, Dr. Melandris added, our analysis of human methods suggests they've found ways to achieve rapid advancement while maintaining stability through different mechanisms. They've solved the advancement stability paradox that we've always considered unsolvable. Trade Minister Velkarn stepped forward with economic data that complicated the situation further. Preliminary analysis of human development suggests enormous potential benefits for participating species. Technological advancement rates could increase by 400 to 800%. Economic growth could accelerate beyond anything we've seen in galactic history. And the risks? High Chancellor Morgath asked. Unknown, Velkarn admitted. Human methods have only been tested on human society. Applied to different species, the results could be dramatically different. We could see unprecedented prosperity, or we could see social collapse. The uncertainty was what made the decision so difficult. Council methods guaranteed stable, predictable results. Human methods offered potentially superior results, but with unknown risks. The choice between certainty and opportunity was not one the galactic community was prepared to make. Ambassador Zekthar found himself thinking about the conversation that had started this crisis months earlier. The humans had refused to negotiate not because they were hostile, but because they believed the Council was offering the wrong things. Now, they were proving that point by offering alternatives that Council species found attractive. What do the humans actually want? He asked aloud. drawing attention from the assembled representatives. Dr. Melandris turned his multiple eyes towards Zekthar. We believe they want to validate their approach by demonstrating its effectiveness with non-human species. If their methods work for other civilizations, it proves that their rejection of council integration was justified. And if their methods don't work with other species? Admiral Kreshta asked. Then, they learned valuable information about the limitations of their approach, Dr. Melandris replied. Either way, they gain knowledge that helps them refine their development systems. Representative Alkesh stood to address the assembly directly. The humans have transmitted detailed information about their methodologies, their safeguards, and their monitoring systems. They're not asking us to adopt their methods blindly. They're asking us to study their approaches and adapt them to our own circumstances. Which could work, Science Coordinator Talmesh agreed. Or could create hybrid systems that combine the worst aspects of both approaches while achieving the benefits of neither. The risk assessment was brutal, but honest. Innovation always carried the possibility of failure. And failure on a galactic scale could affect billions of lives across hundreds of star systems. But the alternative was equally concerning. If the Council prevented member species from exploring human methods, and those methods proved genuinely superior, then the galactic community would be condemning itself to permanent inferiority compared to humanity. There is another consideration, Junior Analyst Kex TI said from the gallery. The humans are not just offering these partnerships to Council species. Our intelligence suggests they're making similar offers to non-aligned civilizations, pre-contact species, and even some groups that have been hostile to galactic authority. The statement sent waves of concern through the assembly. If humans were spreading their development methods throughout the galaxy, the balance of power could shift dramatically. Species that adopted human techniques successfully could become regional powers that challenge Council authority. Strategic implications? Admiral Kreshta asked grimly. Potentialu destabilizing. If human methods work as advertised, we could see the emergence of multiple power centers throughout the galaxy, each developing along human lines rather than Council protocols. The unified galactic community could fragment into competing civilizational approaches. Or, Representative Teacher suggested, we could see the emergence of a more dynamic, more innovative, more capable galactic community that includes multiple successful approaches to development and cooperation. The optimistic interpretation was appealing, but untested. The Council system worked precisely because it provided a single, proven approach that all species could follow. Multiple approaches could lead to greater overall capability, but they could also lead to competition, conflict, and the breakdown of the cooperative systems that had maintained peace. High Chancellor Morgath's ancient voice carried the weight of 12 millennia of experience as he addressed the fundamental choice facing the galaxy. We must decide whether the potential benefits of exploring human methods outweigh the risks to galactic stability. With respect, Ambassador Zekthar said, activating his communication node, I believe we're approaching this decision incorrectly. The chamber fell silent as attention focused on him. He had been one of the first to suggest that the human crisis required a new approach, and his insights had proven valuable. The question isn't whether we should allow species to explore human methods, he continued. The question is whether we can develop Council methods that incorporate the beneficial aspects of human approaches while maintaining the stability we've achieved. Dr. Melandris's multiple processing nodes focused on Zekthar with intense interest. Synthesis rather than competition. Adaptation rather than replacement. Exactly, Zekthar replied. The humans have shown us that rapid advancement and stability aren't mutually exclusive if you have the right frameworks. Instead of choosing between their approach and ours, we could develop new approaches that combine the best of both. Science Coordinator Talmesh began displaying data about hybrid development possibilities. Theoretical analysis suggests that controlled competition within cooperative frameworks could accelerate innovation while maintaining stability. We could create competitive zones for advancement while preserving cooperative zones for security. The concept was intriguing. Instead of requiring all species to follow identical development protocols, the Council could establish multiple pathways that allowed for different approaches while maintaining overall coordination. Implementation challenges? Coordinator Veslin asked. Significant, Talmesh admitted. We would need to develop new governance structures, new economic frameworks, new security protocols. Essentially, we would need to evolve the Council itself to accommodate multiple development philosophies. Evolution rather than revolution, Representative Valkesh said thoughtfully. We could maintain the benefits of our current system while adding the capabilities the humans have demonstrated. Trade Minister Velkarn was analyzing economic implications rapidly. Hybrid systems could provide the stability of cooperation with the advancement rate of competition. Economic projections suggest potential benefits that exceed either pure approach. But, Admiral Kreshta added, hybrid systems would also be more complex, harder to manage, and more prone to unexpected interactions between different approaches. The debate continued for hours as representatives explored possibilities that had never been seriously considered. The humans had forced the galaxy to confront not just alternative methods, but the possibility of evolution within existing frameworks. As the session progressed, a consensus began to emerge around a proposal that would have been unthinkable months earlier. The Council would establish experimental zones where interested species could explore hybrid development approaches that combined Council stability with human advancement techniques. Pilot programs, High Chancellor Morgath announced, carefully controlled, extensively monitored, limited in scope until we understand the implications. It was a compromise that satisfied no one completely, but offered a path forward that addressed everyone's concerns. The humans would get their experiments in applying their methods to non-human species. The Council would maintain oversight and safety controls. Individual species would get opportunities to explore alternatives without abandoning the galactic community. Implementation timeline? Dr. Melandris asked. Immediate, Murgotreplid. The humans have already made their offers. We need to establish our own frameworks before species begin adopting their methods without Council oversight. As the session adjourned, Ambassador Zekthar reflected on how completely the situation had changed. What had begun as a crisis of refusal had become an opportunity for evolution. The humans had succeeded in forcing galactic civilization to grow in ways that might benefit everyone. But the real test would come in the implementation. Could the Council maintain unity while accommodating diversity? Could stability coexist with rapid change? Could cooperation and competition function within the same framework? The answers would reshape the galaxy. And somewhere in human space, a species that had refused to negotiate was watching to see whether their example would inspire the galaxy toward greater possibilities or lead it toward fragmentation and conflict. The humans had thrown down a challenge. Now, the galaxy would discover whether it was capable of rising to meet it. 2 years had passed since the establishment of the experimental development zones, and the results were transforming the galaxy in ways no one had anticipated. Ambassador Zekthar stood in what had once been the emergency session chamber of Council Station Omega, now converted into the Hybrid Development Coordination Center. Around him, representatives from dozens of species worked alongside human consultants to refine systems that were proving more successful than anyone had dared hope. The transformation was visible everywhere. Ships moved through the station's docking bays with designs that combined Council stability engineering with human innovation principles. Trade flowed through networks that maintained Council cooperation frameworks while operating at human-inspired efficiency levels. Even the station itself had been redesigned using hybrid architectural concepts that maximized both functionality and aesthetic appeal. Ambassador Zekthar called Dr. Melandris, approaching with data streams that showed the latest analysis from the experimental zones. The quarterly assessments are ready for review. Zekthar activated his personal display interface, and began reviewing results that continued to exceed expectations. Species participating in the hybrid development programs were showing advancement rates that surpassed both pure council and estimated pure human models, while maintaining stability indicators that remained well within acceptable parameters. The synthesis effect, Dr. Melandris explained, his multiple processing nodes working to organize complex data flows. When human competitive innovation is applied within council cooperative frameworks, the results are superior to either approach alone. Competition drives advancement, but cooperation ensures that advancement benefits everyone. The data was remarkable. The Ascending Coalition had increased their technological development rate by 340%, while actually improving their social stability indices. The Melodian Harmonics had achieved breakthrough discoveries in energy generation while maintaining their cultural traditions intact. Even the Cautious Equilibrium Coalition had shown significant advancement without the social disruption they had feared. Human consultation effectiveness? Zekthar asked. Exceptional, Dr. Melandris replied. The humans have proven remarkably adept at adapting their methodologies to work with non-human psychology and social structures. They're not trying to make other species become human. They're helping other species become better versions of themselves. It was a crucial distinction that had made the entire program possible. Early fears that human methods would homogenize galactic civilization had proven unfounded. Instead, human consultants worked to understand each species' unique characteristics and develop customized approaches that enhanced existing strengths while addressing historical limitations. Examples? Zekthar requested. Dr. Melandris activated detailed displays showing specific case studies. The Crothan Military Enhancement Program has produced warriors whose capabilities exceed traditional Crothan standards while maintaining their honor-based social structures. The Transcendent Research Acceleration Protocols have increased their discovery rates while preserving their contemplative philosophical approach. Each example showed the same pattern. Human methods enhanced existing capabilities rather than replacing them. The key insight was that competition and cooperation weren't opposite approaches, but complementary tools that could be applied differently depending on circumstances and objectives. What about the humans themselves? Zekthar asked. How has their involvement in these programs affected their own development? Dr. Melandris's expression shifted to what might have been amazement. Their advancement has accelerated beyond our previous projections. Apparently, teaching their methods to other species has provided them with new perspectives that enhance their own innovation processes. They're learning as much from us as we are from them. The revelation was both encouraging and somewhat unsettling. If humans continue to advance at exponential rates while helping other species improve, they could become so far ahead that meaningful cooperation became impossible. But early indicators suggested that wasn't happening. The cooperation paradox, Dr. Melandris explained. The more the humans help other species advance, the more advanced partners they have for their own development. They're not pulling ahead of everyone else. They're pulling everyone else along with them. Science coordinator Talmesh approached with additional data that showed the broader galactic implications. Economic integration between experimental zones and traditional council systems is proceeding smoothly. No significant disruptions, no destabilizing effects, and overall galactic prosperity is increasing at unprecedented rates. The economic success was perhaps the most impressive achievement. Trade between hybrid development zones and traditional council systems had created opportunities that benefited everyone. Advanced technologies developed through competitive innovation were shared through cooperative networks, while stable resource allocation systems provided security that enabled risk-taking in development projects. Political implications? Zekthar asked. Positive, Talmesh replied. Species participating in hybrid programs report higher satisfaction with galactic governance, increased confidence in their own capabilities, and stronger commitment to galactic unity. The opposite of what we feared. It made sense in retrospect. Species that felt they were reaching their potential were more likely to support systems that enabled that achievement. The hybrid programs had given species opportunities to grow while maintaining the security and support of council membership. Coordinator Veslin materialized nearby, her form showing the satisfied stability that indicated successful coordination efforts. "The humans have requested a formal meeting," she announced. The statement drew immediate attention from everyone in the coordination center. For 2 years, human consultants had worked within the experimental programs, but official contact between humanity and the council had remained severed. A request for formal meeting suggested that the situation was entering a new phase. "Details?" Zekthar asked. "Minimal," Veslin replied. "They want to discuss future coordination opportunities and expanded cooperation frameworks." The message was transmitted through their console embedded with the Ascending Coalition program. The timing suggested that the humans had observed the success of the hybrid programs and were ready to discuss more extensive cooperation. But it also suggested that they were still approaching the situation on their own terms rather than accepting council authority. "High Chancellor Morgath has agreed to the meeting," Veslin continued. "It's scheduled for next week here at Council Station Omega. Full diplomatic protocols, but with modifications to accommodate human preferences for informal communication." The news spread rapidly throughout the station as representatives from across the galaxy prepared for the first formal contact with humanity in over 2 years. The meeting would determine whether the success of the experimental programs could lead to broader cooperation or whether fundamental differences would still prevent meaningful integration. Admiral Kreshta arrived at the coordination center with security assessments that reflected the complexity of the situation. "Human diplomatic capabilities appear to be as advanced as their other technologies," she reported. "They've studied our communication protocols, our decision-making processes, and our cultural sensitivities. They're prepared for negotiations at a level that suggests extensive intelligence gathering." "Concerning?" Dr. Melandris asked. "Impressive. Admiral Kreshta corrected. They're approaching this meeting with the same thoroughness they apply to everything else. They want it to succeed, and they've prepared accordingly." The preparation included detailed analysis of every council species psychology, extensive research into galactic history and politics, and development of communication strategies designed to maximize understanding while minimizing cultural friction. "What do they want?" Zekthar asked, echoing the question that had started this entire crisis. "Based on our analysis," Admiral Kreshtar replied, "they want what they've always wanted, to be left alone to develop their own path. But they also want galactic civilization to succeed, and they've concluded that helping others advance serves both goals." It was a sophisticated position that reflected the strategic thinking humanity had demonstrated throughout the crisis. They weren't seeking dominance or control. They were seeking an environment where their approach to development could coexist with other approaches while contributing to overall galactic advancement. Trade Minister Velkarn joined the group with economic projections that showed the potential implications of expanded human cooperation. If current trends continue, and if the humans are willing to extend their consultation programs, galactic economic output could increase by 200 to 300.